Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest edition of RE027, where I take old stories that I've narrated and update them to my current standards of audio recording. If you like this sort of thing, I'd be very much appreciative if you click the like button, and if I've earned it, the subscribe button. More importantly, I hope that you enjoy this story. It is called The Clockmaster, written by RegalLegalEagle. What do I know of philosophy? I'm just a clockmaker. And yet, I find myself staring at the only two books in the whole town that approaches the subject. One of them isn't of much help, since it was given to me by Father Sienna. All it tells me about philosophy is that some power greater than myself has already laid out all the rules, and I just need to follow them. The other, well, it's a bit of a tricky one, as it isn't exactly a philosophy book, per se. Is that the right term, per se? I think it is. Heard it used like that before. It's a bit of a how-to book. All it really says is that it's up to us to do everything we can in order to discover what we can do that we didn't realize yet. I've read it cover to cover many times over the years. My father gave it to me on my 13th birthday. Shortly after, I had my first pair of glasses made. They were incredible things to me. Some little bits of glass, some wire to hold them to my face, and suddenly the world came into focus. He knew how much I liked them, so he gave me the book. And well, again, it is a how-to book. That sort of idea that we must do everything we can in order to discover what more we can do, well, that became my philosophy of sorts. Maybe I'm going about this all wrong. Maybe I need a book on that other thing. Morals? Well, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. Ethics, maybe? That might be the word I want. I'll have to find someone who has a dictionary. That won't be easy either. Not out here. There was a rumble from outside, and I quickly reached out to set my hand on my tools so they didn't get disorganized while the ship passed. I could see it outside my windows briefly, the stars and strikers flying proudly off the back. They'd come a long way from the gliders and clippers I saw as a kid. Now they were Ironsides. Proud ships of peace, they said, as if a warship was a peace ship. Don't know if they were lying to us or themselves. Not like anyone minded. Anything to keep the marauders at bay and the old kingdoms. But those were troubles for other people. People who had an affinity for six-shooters and rifles and that sort of thing. Not me. I made clocks. Made. The word rolled around my head for a little. Was it already past tense? I leaned back now that the ship had passed and the danger of disorganizing my tools with it. I suppose that after this, there was a chance I really was done making clocks. Maybe. To think it had all started with a small gift of bluestone. I knew it was what lifted our ships out of the water or carried them above the lava pools from plateau to plateau. I heard it had some funny properties, they said. Well, I was far too curious to worry about the hazards, of course. The ones I knew about, from the manual at least. I'd found a few others while I worked. Had to let my eyebrows regrow twice. All I had been trying to do was create a toy, something I could sell with the clocks, something for the kids. They didn't need to know what time it was. What did they care? They had all the time in the world, right up until life decides they needed to grow up in a hurry. Then they'd need clocks to get to work on time. But until then, a toy. That's all it was meant to be. I took a slow, deep breath, fingers rubbing across my forehead, while I leaned back and looked at my creation, sitting there before me on the table. It had some charcoal in its hand that I'd given it. It was a drawing. It had only supposed to have been a toy, a little wind-up thing. I thought the blue stone would give it some extra, I don't know, extra something? Power? What did I know? I made clocks. I make clocks. Made. Make. I don't know. It slowly turned to look at me, and then held up a piece of scrap paper it had been drawing on with the charcoal. It was me and him. 2 days ago, it had been a childlike drawing. Very simple, very basic. Now he was properly shading an image that looked almost good enough to be one of the tintypes. I was smiling, and he was sitting on my shoulder. Even without a mouth, it looked happy. Like he was my little helper or something. I reached for my glass and quickly tossed it back, squeezing my eyes shut and gasping softly as the whiskey burned all the way down. I wasn't much of a drinker, or I hadn't been until 2 days ago. It set the paper and charcoal down as it got up, walked up a few steps across the table before reaching back and twisting the key to keep himself wound up. He kept himself wound up. He knew what would happen if it ever stopped. I didn't teach him that. He just knew. Once he was done, he walked forward once more, his legs a little stiff, his gait a bit off. Maybe I should adjust it, help him walk smoother. Him. When I started thinking of it as him, it lifted up a bottle then, tilting it to pour some more whiskey into my glass, and then set it back down before walking over to the papers once more and sitting down to pick up the charcoal. I wondered what he would draw next. He, she, it. I licked my lips, which felt dry and parched despite the fact that I had plenty to drink. I reached over to pick up my how-to book, my own philosophical guide of sorts. I carefully opened it up and turned to a set of pages near the back. There was a list, one written in my own hand 15 years ago. At the end of the main part of the book, the writer encourages the reader to write out a list of things they didn't think that they could do, and then challenged them to do it anyway and prove themselves wrong. Since I wrote the list when I was 13, I'd been wrong about a great many things on my list. But some I had been right about so far. And now I moved my pencil up to the list of the very first item I had written down. The very thing that as a boy I was positive I would never, ever, in 100 years, be able to do. And I crossed it off. Create life. With that done, I slowly closed the book and set it aside once more. Then my hand started to move to something else on my table, but it was shaking so badly I had to stop short. All I could do was stare at it. A gun. I had bought it yesterday. I'd never used one before, but Hector was nice enough to show me how, and let me try to hit the bottle in range out back. I hadn't managed it, but he said I was close. I could never undo what I had done. I'd never uncrossed that line in my book. But did I let it continue? Did I have the courage to see what would come of this? Did I have the courage to not see what would come of this? It was the sort of question that great thinkers in history were supposed to answer. Not someone like me. I started to reach out again and stopped, my hands retreating to the grip of the arms of my chair as I stared ahead. He was drawing something else now, something new. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what it looked like from here. Blueprints. That's what I'd say, at least. I watched him for another few minutes and then recognized what he was designing. A clock. I slowly looked around the walls of my workshop. All the clocks around me. Some small, some large, some simple, some intricate. And they all had the exact same time on them. They'd stopped working, all at the same time, 2 days ago, when I had finished it. I started to reach forward once more, my eyes focused on the handle of the gun, but somehow my fingers missed, and they closed around my glass. I didn't drink more whiskey, though. Not yet. I just kept staring at it, at my books, at my tools. I saw them, and yet I didn't see them. My glasses were cracked. The same explosion? Was that the right word for it? The event that had stopped the clocks when I first wound up the gears to make it dance. It had also cracked my glasses. I need to get them fixed, but the lens maker wouldn't be through for another month or so. Glasses. They made me better. They let me see. When someone had sat down to create glasses, had they thought that they were making the world a better place? That they would help people, that they could make their fellow man stronger in a small way? Or were they curious, like me? Did they just start making a lens to see what they could and couldn't do? Did they have any idea what sort of impact their invention would have? What was their intent? I didn't have another answer to any of those questions, much like I had no answer to my own question. I picked up my glass then, knocking it back as the whiskey made me gasp as it burned all the way down yet again. I slumped back in my chair, lacking the will or whatever the best word for it was to grab the gun or to even fill my glass again. But just like before, he stood up and stiffly walked over to the bottle to pour me some more. Once he was standing, I could see the drawing better. The clock he was designing looked wonderful, elegant in its simplicity, the sort of thing I liked to make. Something that would last for years, even out here. I felt like crying, and I wasn't exactly sure why. I was angry and sad and confused and drunk, most certainly drunk, but that didn't really change the trueness to what I was thinking. The truth. Trueness? My eyes unfocused a bit then, so I could look at the little cracks in the lenses held before my eyes. What do I know of philosophy? I'm just a clockmaker. And from the looks of that drawing, so is he. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.